But at this time, I am delighted to be able to introduce to you the Reverend William Mathis. We are so glad to have you. A little bit about the Reverend Mathis. After a successful career in law, with a focus on public policy as it relates to structural racism and preventative programs for young people, the Reverend Mathis returned to school and received an MDiv from Harvard University in 2002. The Reverend Mathis has a passion for working collaboratively. It is seen in his presence as the program manager for Project Longevity, which is an initiative that brought together state, local, academic, and nonprofit entities for the purpose of reducing homicides and violence here in New Haven. This passion for collaboration is likewise seen in his leadership in working with others to form the Springs of Life-Giving Water Church, also known as the Springs, an American Baptist church that has the vision of empowering individuals to seek the direction in their lives and to work together to live into the promises of God. And this collaboration is seen in the Reverend Mathis's work as the CEO of WLM Ministries, Inc., a nonprofit devoted to providing consulting services for the development of community and faith-based initiatives with a specialty in the areas of criminal justice, neighborhood safety, community building, youth empowerment, social justice, and African diaspora collaboration. And last but hardly least, the Reverend Mathis is here at Yale Divinity School, providing oversight in assisting the institution, the faculty, and the student body in the experience, exposure, and engagement of theological perspectives and practice of faith among Africans and people of the African diaspora. Dr. Mathis, your accolades can and do go on and on. Welcome. We are delighted that you are here.
Grace, mercy, and peace be unto you from God our Father and from the Lord Jesus Christ. Indeed, it is my pleasure and my honor to share with you today. I just want to get a couple of things out of the way. As it is, the Lord has kindly and most undeservingly, some would say graciously, smiled upon me that I've had quite a few experiences, in particular that the one at Morehouse and at Harvard. But I don't want none of that to fool you or to make you think that we're going to have a journey that is high polluting at all. I'm just a country boy that came from a place where two dirt roads met together. And so I want to be able to share what the Lord has placed upon my heart to share with you in the hopes that God would be revealed and that he will reveal the mighty gifts and talents within you. In order to set the stage, let me just also say it's a bad combination when you got a preacher and a trained lawyer. But I am going to try to work within the frameworks of my time. But I think you will help me if while we transition from our eating to our engaging and encountering God, sing a line with me. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. And with thanksgiving, I'll be a living witness for you. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and tried and with thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Come on, one more time. Lord, prepare to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and with thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. What I want to call your attention to today is that very sentiment, that we would be living sanctuaries available unto God. That living sanctuary is not anything that's brick or mortar or that's confined by boundaries or walls, but open and flowing and free and living as God, the Spirit of whom He is. And so for that, I want to suggest to you in our time together, Project New Generation, a creative and nurturing community space for youth engagement. Now, I also want to just give some this is, I trust that I have done a successful job in trying to make this as plain and simple and connected as possible, but I want to say this is part of a larger work that I am working on. I do solicit your prayers. I am trying to gather up the fragments, the evolving Black church, and one portion of that is looking at youth engagement and where we are today. This is also a combination of work from my background with the Select Committee on Narcotics Abuse and Control, as a former prosecutor, as a consultant with the Baraka School in Kenya, East Africa, my role as with the Aspen Institute Roundtable on Comprehensive Community Initiatives, also my work at Brown University and now here at Yale, and also my work at Project Longevity and my work at the Springs itself. And so I'm pulling all of those experiences as to develop some kind of paradigm, some protocol in which we can actively engage the youth of our community for the purposes of all of us being whole and our community being elevated. One of the things that for me is important and critical is the Word of God and a true understanding of that Word of God. And so it becomes the jumping off point for me in any endeavor. And so I want to encourage you, let me see if I'm getting this click right. There we go. Encourage you, whether you have your Bibles with you now or if you would take this opportunity to reflect, and it is on the screen, two scriptures that I want to use as a basis for our engagement today. The first one is found in Proverbs, the 22nd chapter, verse 6. Proverbs, the 22nd, verse 6. You should have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation so that if you have all the salient notes, and so we can really just engage one another. Proverbs 22:6, and I'm reading from a version entitled The Message by Eugene Peterson. Point your kids in the right direction. When they're old, they won't be lost. For those who are traditional, the King James Version would say, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from. But I like Eugene Peterson's interpretation and translation, where he says, point. And as I said, I'm just a country preacher that come from where two dirt roads met together. I looked up the word point. And a definition of point is a particular aim, end, or purpose. And so the writer of Proverbs says point. Show them to a particular end, purpose, aim. In the country, they say we were reared. Reared meaning to be lifted up, to be elevated. And so the writer of Proverbs says that our challenge, our charge is to show some sense of direction, some sense of purpose, some sense of, if you will, vision, and lift them up and elevate them to that end. The second text is found in the book of of Psalms, the book of Psalms, that 71st divisions have been trained. 71st division of Psalms, verses 17 through 18. Now I'm reading this one from the King James Version. O God, thou hast taught me from my youth, and hitherto have I declared thy wondrous works. Now also, when I am old and gray-headed, O God, forsake me not until I have showed thy strength unto this generation, and thy power to everyone that is to come. Thus far the scripture. He says, I know I'm in good company, and the book of Psalms ain't nothing but a book of, is the psalm book, the hymn book. For the church, they were songs, and songs were generally written and developed out of experiences. Somebody say experiences. All right. Yeah, they develop out of experiences. And so the experience of the writer of the psalm says that you have taught me, that the experiences of my life have provided me revelation, has provided me information, has provided me some insight. And it just didn't happen when I came to know who God was, but it happened even in my youth. And it is because of those experiences that has led me to the place that I am. I may be gray-headed now, a little gray, not too much gray, but a little gray. Gray-headed, but don't let me forget my experiences that got me here, that I might also share those. That sounds simple, that sounds good, that's a good word. I can open the doors of the church, all of those kinds of things. But how does that practically play out? We live in a world today, and particularly in the church world. I see some members of the American Baptist Church who are here. I am the president for the American Baptist Churches of Connecticut. It is a phenomenon that we are all struggling with in our local congregations. We are struggling with it in our denominations. We are struggling with it, whether it's a white church or black church or diverse church or mixed church or this kind of church or that kind of church or liberal church or conservative church or evangelical church or King James Version only church or NIV church. Everyone is struggling. We're struggling for not only the faces and bodies of youth, but engagement of youth. And yet we have this challenge of our faith that says that we ought to be showing some sense of direction. We should be elevating and lifting some kind of purpose, some kind of aim, some kind of vision to those because of our own experiences that have shown us that it is necessary for those things, and we are commanded, after which the Holy Ghost shall come upon you, not just to shout and speak in tongues and foam at the mouth and roll on the floor, but to give you power to be witnesses. My law degree says to me that a witness is somebody who has evidentiary of value and worth. The best kind of witness is somebody who's an eyewitness, a first-hand knowledge. And so God didn't call us to just sit in our beautiful churches with stained glass and pipe organs and et cetera, and think, well, they sure should come to church. Or that, and that our witness is only within those particular walls. I want to suggest to you, and nobody don't throw no food at me. I do have my car ready and running hot, and I see one of my members here, so I got some help. Well, we're trying to place a new generation in an old generational space and blame them for not for not fitting into that. I know some of you all have had the opportunity. I know I ain't the only one. I need to lay on a couch every now and then, maybe once a week. But, sometimes they give you these little games and they give you these things, these pieces, and you got to put them into this box. And for some of us who just are going to be antisocial and defiant, we just going to make this square peg fit into this circular hole. I want to suggest that's what we're doing. Well, and will some fit in now? If you keep pressing enough, but you're going to damage the peg. And watch this. And you will damage the circular hole until eventually nothing will fit. And so what Project New Generation does is challenges us to move beyond that. And there's some particular foundational principles that I think we learn from the Word, but also from our experiences. One, encounter. If you're going to develop this creative and nurturing community space, the foundation, the rock for you, one of those rocks is encounter. You've got to take on the attitude of encounter by meeting youth where they are, aware and sensitive of internal and external conflicts. Meeting them where they are. What do you mean meeting them where they are? Not where you want them to be. Not where they should be, not where you were when you were their age, but where they are. And understand that the environment in which they exist creates, as in anybody, internal and external conflicts of coming into who they are supposed to be and the purpose for their lives. Second, and that's how you got to encounter, that's the way I'm suggesting that you should encounter them. Second thing is, after encountering, you got to engage them. And engaging them is being fully present where youth are. I want to say that again. Being fully present where youth are. Respecting where they are by listening and learning. Remember the scripture talked about the fact that we're gray-headed? We've had some experiences. All of us have taken on identity and taken on attitudes and taken on things that have been influenced by our immediate surrounding or circumstances. And at that moment, we were that person. But we learned, after, as my grandmother would say, a few rising of the suns and setting of the same, that was only part of the process of becoming who we are. And so instead of you meeting them where you want them to be or where you think they should be or where they will be, how about meeting them and engaging them where they are? Without the kind of attitude that says, you don't know what you're talking about, boy. You don't know what you're talking about, girl. You ain't lived long enough to do. Now, just meet them where they are. Third thing about encountering, engaging, and then exposing them. Presenting positive alternatives where youth are, revealing opportunities. As I indicated, I grew up in what I would call the country down in Albany, Georgia. Albany, that Harvard and Northeast stuff got me saying Albany, but it's Albany. I grew up in Albany, Georgia. And I grew up in the segregated South. I know I don't look that old, but, but segregation lasted for a long time in the Deep South. My whole world was East Albany. East Albany, of course, was where we lived. And so my aunt had a store down the street. I knew the banker down the street. I knew the lawyer. All of us lived in the same neighborhood, all dirt roads. We all there. I didn't know anything different. It wasn't until I went to college I found out that people live differently than that. And it was in college in which I was exposed to a variety of ways to live, to preach. As a preacher, I used to not think you couldn't preach if you couldn't hoop. It didn't make any, it didn't move. It was nothing. It wasn't until I was exposed. But at the time, that was it for me. But after the experience and the exposure, my whole world opened up again. And it wasn't because somebody forced me to be exposed. It became a natural kind of thing that happened where I was. encounter, engage, expose, and then experience. Taking a personal interest and investing in youth. I'm gonna have to use my iPad. That writing too small. They must have thought I was taking an interest and investing, taking a personal interest and investment consistently and persistently where they are. Two things I definitely want you to get about understanding this foundational principle of experience. It's consistent and persistently. Consistently and persistently. Consistently. One of the things that often happen with us in the church, let me take that back. One of the things that often happen at the Springs of Life-Giving Water Church is that we have this great idea of what we're going to do, and this ought to help the young people, this ought to get the young people in here, and we do that and they don't bite. And so after a few Friday nights of coming out and getting hot dogs and hamburgers, and we got to throw away the food or got to get the food away, and that nobody don't show up, and I'm missing Empire or Power on television in order to be here to do that, we just stop doing it. No, consistently, if you're going to engage youth and you're going to create a space for them to engage, then it has to be consistent and persistent. Whether or not it rains, whether or not everybody shows up, whether or not those are some foundational principles about experiences, because my experience that is inconsistent and not persistent, meaning that you really just kind of fulfilling a program. You're just doing something because we're doing something. And so I want to suggest to you that before we even get into what Project New Generation is, I want you to understand that it's about encountering people. It's about exposing people. It's about them having experiences and engaging them. Those are foundational principles in order to, one, build relationship. And the relationship must be built not on where they're going to be, where you think they should be, or where they ought to be, but where they are. So Project New Generation takes this as a comprehensive community approach. That this is not something that one or two youth workers in the church or one or two people in the community can take on by themselves, because if you're going to engage them, you've got to engage the wholeness of their lives. And that means, again, being consistent and persistent so that you can encounter, expose, engage, and experience them. Then it's going to take all hands on deck. And so you may be in the ministry and you got a passion and a heart for the youth and you want to start this youth program, but the pastor's not on board or the sexton is not on board because he's not coming back out on Friday night to open up at 6 o'clock for no meeting when 2 or 3 people come. And that'll throw it out of whack. That'll make you frustrated, and that frustration will also make the child frustrated because they don't want to stand outside in the cold waiting to get in, and you trying to call somebody to get in and all the kind. And so it's buying. Well, we can't go to the game. I thought we were going to be able to go to the game, but we don't have the resources to go to the game, and that's going to disappoint the child. And so this sense of comprehensive community is bringing the entire community of however you define the community for your program, bringing that entire community to bear because everyone becomes responsible and accountable to them. And I want to suggest to you that there are 3 things that should be at the outcomes for this creative and nurturing community space from this sense of community. One, identify individual and collective critical issues to support organic, creative, and collaborative community paradigms that are culturally and socially sensitive for addressing those issues. I could talk all day, but let me just kind of summarize that. Part of what I want to walk you through are the phases that not just focuses on the individual, the youth, but focuses on the issues of the youth and the things, the processes and things that they're going through, so that it is not seen like something that's directed to help you. You know, I'm trying to help you. But instead, it is something that assists and elevates and develops community. And so the process is not just about the youth going to, but also about you getting the right direction to point them to. And so we all grow together and we develop together. And they see it as a process of engaging one another so that we all might be. And so when we identify the individual, we also want to identify the collective gifts. What do we have together? What do you have and what do you bring to the table? And so as a result, what do we have together? And in that way, we start working on things, and not your attitude right now, but working on things that develop new paradigms that is a benefit for us all. And in the process of doing that, we start whittling away at stuff and things that don't fit within their own developed paradigm for community. And so you don't have to say, you shouldn't do this. It becomes known to the person, if this is going to be effective, this paradigm that I've developed and designed, then I cannot, I wish somebody heard me, cannot do this. Second thing, develop and nurture internal gifts, talents, skills, cultural, economic, faith, social, toward casting vision for their lives, while also providing opportunities of sharing and participating in the life of the community. And so it isn't enough to say that someone is a great musician, or they write music, or they rap well, or they write poetry, or they do this, or they are really high tech, and just develop all of those skills for them to be insular. But how about help develop their skills so that they are used for the wider good of the community? Again, without necessarily saying this is just about you and you get your, but that it's about you giving. Anybody ever read this book by Give and Take by Adam Grant? Adam Grant wrote maybe a couple of years ago a book about give and take. And he talks about, he looks at, by data, the most successful people in kind of like corporate America or in corporations. And he categorizes them in quote unquote, 3 categories: givers, matchers, and takers. And then based upon his data, he looks at who are the most successful people. Now, who would you think were the most successful people? Takers. No. Takers and matchers were in the middle. Givers were unsuccessful, the least successful, but givers who were strategic about their giving were the most successful people. Because givers who are strategic about their giving build and develop networks that support a broader growth and abundance and a harvest than the individual who's just giving so in return. And so this sense of developing the gifts and talents and et cetera of the individual also must be integrated with them being part of a collective narrative in which they have an opportunity to showcase and be a part of a collective sense of community. Third thing, to affirm as vibrant and necessary representatives of and participants within community. Shared experiences for shared resolutions. And so instead of trying to solve the problem for them, you bring them along as a part of the committee or the group or the community that provides. And so we share our experiences around them. Because a lot of, just using my my criminal background as a prosecutor, particularly when I'm working with you, and some youth, example, may be selling drugs, and not listening to excuses to sell drugs, but just really meeting them where they are and hearing them from where they are selling drugs because the mother or the father is an addict, and all of the money that comes in the first of the month in order to feed me and my little brother and my little sister goes out to drugs. And the only job I can get at 12 and 13 is to stand on the corner and be a lookout so that I can make sure that we have gas in the winter, that I can make sure that we have food and community, et cetera. It never occurred to them that there was a possibility of reaching out for help. And even if it did, the embarrassment of what it may mean to the mama, all of us would think is nothing, but to him is everything. And so to enlarge youth thinking and understanding that is broader and with people and places and things that they trust. And so as they become integral and vibrant parts of the community, they are not only receiving from the community, but they're also giving in the community. They're not just giving to the community, they're also receiving from the community, and they see themselves as that. And we must be a part of that. And so just to start on that last point, there is not going to be any successful youth engagement if there is not also engagement with the youth home environment. Prime example, part of my background is I served as a program consultant for a school called the Baraka School. 60 Minutes did a special on the Baraka School. Baraka School was a school that was developed by a Kenyan national, Susan Kikwa. Susan was working in the Department of Children and Family Services in Baltimore, and I was a prosecutor in Baltimore. And she saw so many young brothers coming into the system, in particular going on to the criminal justice system, who had an enormous amount of potential. And so, but they were so disconnected from community and the possibilities that were available unto them, that she came up with this idea of a school for middle school boys who were on the borderline between either seeing me as a prosecutor or going on to college and doing extremely well, but they were on the fence. And she got this funding from the Able Foundation compound, and part of it was also about exposure. So this is where I really get my piece about exposure. Able Foundation in Baltimore. And so they leased some property in Kenya, East Africa, a place called Nanyuki. Wonderful, beautiful area in the middle of nowhere. And fifth and sixth grade, they would spend at the Baraka School in Kenya, East Africa. And then if they were successful doing that program, coming up to grade level and beyond, that the foundation would sponsor them in either boarding schools or college prep schools. But one of the critiques, which was one of my jobs here, critiques of the program was that they would go there, spend the school year, September to May. They would come home in June, July, August, come back in September, and we have to start all over again, because no one ever developed and nurtured the community space in which it was their home life. And so to create this community space is open not just to the youth, but also a way to also reach their home life so that it all transforms with them. Because even if the child buys in and transforms, the reality of his regular space can be an impact. So on that, I suggest, I want to say this first too. My work for the most part has been and is around African diaspora communities because I'm black and that's the only thing I know how to be. I've been black all my life. And so I do want to introduce to you this concept of what community is. And based upon my experiences and based upon who I am, Ubuntu is the best definition. It's an African concept of community that says that you are because I am, and I am is because we are. if we're going to engage the youth of our community, and I imagine that many of you who are saying, that you're in a city, all the people who were part of your congregation have moved out to the suburbs, or they've gotten older and their children have moved away and there are no grandchildren, those kind of things. And so you are looking in the surrounding area of your communities and etc. It becomes important that you're not just reaching out to them for them to be bodies in seats, or you just reaching out with this traditional missionary concept, we here to help you and to save you. But instead that we see you as me and me as you. Dr. Borges, who was the chairman of the African American Studies program at Brown University, at one convocation in his address, he talked about the fact that Jesus said that we ought to love ye one another. I'm going to say that over here. That we ought to love ye one another. I don't believe, this is Mathis axiom 22764. I don't believe nothing is by happenstance or accident. It's all divinely ordered. In the King James Version it said, love ye one another. You know, another is just another version of you. But when we treat and engage people as the other, it implies something strange, something that's not right. And so when Jesus says to us that we love you one another, I want to suggest to you that he's saying that I love you because you are only another version of me. I don't want you to be me. I don't need for you to be me, because God didn't need both of me's. He only need me. That's why I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I need for you to be you. And so this Ubuntu says that I am because of you are because of me. That means that sense of community for me and for you is that you be the best you there is. And it's my job to help you to be the best you there is. And your job is to help me to be the best me that I am. And that sense, and when the day of Pentecost, y'all gonna make me preach. On the day of Pentecost had fully come, they were all unified. They were all, that ain't what it said. They were all on one accord. And so the prostitute and the tax collector and the publican and modern day the drug addict, all of them discovered that the same Jesus that they knew, the other version of me saw him this way, and the other version of me saw him this way. And then there came the rush of the mighty wind, and it filled the entire house, the space, some versions say. Watch this. And then it filled their individuals. So this sense of community, if you're going to engage youth on behalf of God, on behalf of ministry, on behalf of the experiences that you had, so that they might have an aim, a purpose, a vision, it's going to be around community, not individualism. See, if I was in economics, I would talk about another thing, but that's another lecture. And so the sense of Ubuntu. And so I think if you're going to create, or if it's going to be a creative and nurturing community space, it has to be an embracing of the philosophy of Ubuntu, in the sense that we are because of you and you are because of us. Now, there are 4 phases, and then I should be through and ready for your questions. The first phase for any program for a project New Generation to develop is to identify and align your team. And that begins in particular with identify and define your target. What do you mean by your target? For instance, as I said earlier, if you want to develop a youth ministry, you want to make an impact in youth, you got to ask yourself, based upon those foundational principles and the sense of community, and let's just be honest with ourselves, community, is this just for the people in my church? Or
are we at a space where we can lodge our vision that we are not on Edward Street on the corner in East Rock just by happenstance, but that we may have been called to East Rock and Edward Street, which expands it. Why is that important for you to define? Because you can develop a creative and nurturing space for youth engagement, but it can be culturally and socially insensitive to those who you're bringing. That's the new way of saying clapping, you all. And so if I am let me just use reverse roles here. If I am a congregation of the African diaspora and I have moved out to the suburbs, and out in the suburbs, we're right in the midst of probably the most affluent and economically sound community on the East Coast. And we having spam night. Spam? What's spam? And then they come in there and say, we open these cans. Or if I am a Caucasian community, traditional, we were the first church on the green. The city was built around us. And we want to have a youth engagement community, and it's totally transformed to an immigrant community where people are coming in from Central America and etc. And you gonna do something. What are they doing? And then get mad because you really tried to do something. You tried to be welcoming, etc. No, if you're going to begin to develop a program, you've got to determine the target. And based upon the target, align a team for that purpose. And you cannot rely on you who grew up in Kentucky in the Blue Hills to know everything and to give you direction and give you advice and give you instruction on what it is to grow up in the Deep South in the segregated area across the roads in Mississippi. The experiences are different. The way you see, y'all can see that here. The way you see things are different. Okay, don't nobody throw nothing at me. I ain't talking about nobody. I don't know nobody in here. There are things, there are ways you think, there are actions you do that are not even necessarily conscious to you that can be offensive to. Because we're all shaped by environment. I know that I ticked off 2 or 3 good people in here today already. But y'all just to my head and not to my heart. Yeah. So you've got to target, you got to understand what you, but also you got to understand what you can do. Don't try to do what you can't do in the name of say that we don't want to be talked about because we right here and they need a lot of time. You may not be called to that. Anybody? I'm going to talk about this book in a little bit later. There's a great book called Visioneering by Andy Stanley. You think, this progressive black preacher read evangelical white? Yeah, I do. I read everybody. And he talks about, you got to distinguish what's a good idea for you as opposed to a God idea for you. And just because everybody else is doing it and it's the right thing to do and they growing, it may not and should not work for you. And so identify that target area. Then I want to suggest that you identify team members. If you're congregations, if you're a nonprofit, identify people who can be committed because that consistency and persistence is critical and key. Identify team members. And don't identify people just because they're interested in doing it. Identify team members who bring something to the table, and you'll see in the next few phases what I'm talking about. Consult with team members. Don't assume that we went to this Youth Ministry Institute, and it must be something because they had this little preacher up there, the country preacher, and he came up with this type of project, New Generation. It must work, and so we just going to work, and so we're no, you got to tweak and adjust this to the uniqueness of you and that particular target that you have. Yes, I am very confident that my work is great, but it may not fit for yours. You've got to help to tweak it to make it fit for you. And so that's what consulting you and get buy-in from the team members. Don't assume. My biggest mistake working in project longevity, doing a number of things, is that I assumed people who came to the table bought in. No, some people only came because they saw it as a way of getting some grant money. That's another, y'all, everybody ought to clap that. Identify problems and potential problems. Don't shy away from it, because this is going to be great preparation for engaging the youth. Because they got internal and external conflicts. Some they talk about, some manifest in ways that you think are bad, but are only their ways of expressing what they're really going through. And so if you all can't do it, then you won't be able to help them to do it. Then engage the problems. Deal with whatever issues you may have so that the team can be on one accord and move forward. And then lastly, exercise integrity. I cannot tell you this enough. Youth are just like anybody else. If they sense or they found out, if they know that you do not have integrity, they will not give you respect. And I dare say they are quicker to see it than we are. Phase 2, identify individuals and collective critical issues. Self-identity, know thyself. You want to help the young people. Remember I talked about encounter, engage, expose, experience. I want you to do that where they are. And so help them to self-identify. That may be a problem. Should I go here? I'm struggling with the spirit. I don't identify in my sexual orientation the way that is the accepted behavior within this particular congregation or what I perceive are faith communities. Well, then how do I encounter and engage and expose and experience them where they are? Because, quote unquote, our church is not an open and affirming church. I can't speak for open and affirming church. I can't say this, I open and affirm God. And I know that God didn't make any mistakes. So that's where they are. Those of you who, there may be you who have continuously worked with me. I may be one way at one age, but that may be because I am only limited in my understanding of who I am. And I'm not suggesting that it's your job to help them to see that they're limited. I'm just saying to you, don't let that be a barrier from you engaging them, because your engagement may help them develop into who they are, which could be that, or someone else. Remember, I am because you are. You are because of me. And so I don't need for you to continue to live in a closet because you can't benefit me and I can't benefit you in there. Y'all done throw me out the church. It's all right. So in the sense of self-identity, let them work through the process. All of us been through the process before. I thought I was a lawyer. Child, I got in debt because I was going to be a lawyer. And when the Lord called me to preach, he said, I tried to tell you that all the time. You were running. You wasn't listening. I was mad with God. Child, I was looking at them bills. I could have forgone all that. And anybody who know anything about law school is pure hell. But that was necessary to get me to where I am. I was not limited. I tried to limit myself that this is it. And the same experience is the same experience youth are having. How many of us we thought we knew the world back in those days? They the same way. I don't know why we think different. And as we progressed, as we got great in it, we found our purpose, we found our direction. We find our aim and we taught move to that. And so let them do that. Let them go through the process. And so part of that is helping them self-identify. SWOT analysis, I'm sure everybody had SWOT analysis. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are their opportunities? What are their threats? Not what you tell them they are. Let them define them. And I guarantee you, when you begin to look at the weaknesses and threats, you'll get an idea of why they are identifying the way they are identifying. And if you deal with the weaknesses and threats, then their strengths and their opportunities will become stronger. They'll become more confident, and they can be who they determine that they are going to be. That may surprise you, because there may be some people on this side who now going to be on that side, or some people on that side who's going to be that. But that ain't your job. The text says point them. Whoop. Uh-oh. This great book by Dr. Naeem Akbar, Know Thyself. Dr. Akbar suggests a three-pronged process: deconstruct, reconstruct, and construct. And Dr. Akbar really talks about the impact of racism on the people of the African diaspora, that they've got to deconstruct that, kind of sever it from the racial attitudes and thoughts and internal and external things that cause you to do things. Reconstruct that which is salvageable, because it is a part of who you are now. But then from that, construct new paradigms. There are going to be some young people who have been abused, not necessarily verbally, not necessarily physically, but maybe even environmentally. And you've got to help to deconstruct all of that, because I thought that all I could espouse to be was to work in the kitchen at Yale. Because everybody I know worked in the kitchen at Yale. And they had a 2-car garage, and they had a house down home. I was in D'Amato's. I don't know if any of you all know D'Amato's here in New Haven. I was in D'Amato's one Friday afternoon. It's a black thing, y'all. We have fish on Friday. And I was in D'Amato's, and I was getting some fish, and there were 2 workers from Yale in their blue uniforms, and there was a man and a young man. And he was talking to him. He was talking to them because his kids were getting ready to graduate from high school, and they need to get a job. They need to do this and that. And they said, "Oh yeah, you go down to personnel, yeah, you can get a good job. You can get a good job at Yale, etc." And they must have went on for about 30, 45 minutes. Nobody ever mentioned the possibility of college. Not one. Not one time. I sat there and I said, "Did you ever think about going to college?" Sometimes your environment limits you. And so you can't even see opportunities that are readily before you. And so you've got to deconstruct some of all of that. Reconstruct what is salvageable, because it ain't bad having a good job. I think you ought to work. But from there, you can construct paradigms, because you can also go to school, you can work, you can do this, you can do that. You may not be at college, you may go to technical school, you may not be. There are a number of different ways in order to do it. But you've got to help them to develop those opportunities. Then intentional building blocks from this is communication with them, self-care, love, accountability, trust, character, conflict, boundaries, responsibilities, and productivity. This is going to be the same each time, but I want to go through it this time in each of the phases, because this is critical and important to support the intentionality of knowing the self, deconstruction, reconstruction, etc. Weekly phone contact. You cannot engage youth and create space for them, and they only see you on Friday or only see you on Saturday. And so you got to be intentional about making sure your team members are making phone contact with them. I learned this from Project Longevity. You can have a great session with them. Everybody can leave out real happy and good. But if you don't see them until a month later or a week later, yeah. And so I got some brothers from Project, and I've been going from Project Longevity about 3-5 years now. And for those of you who know the Power Series, when Power Series come around and come on Sunday night, they come over to my house. And we go down to my basement and we watch it on the big screen. And I've been doing that now about 5 or 6 years with them. Because what I found is that I stayed in contact with them. When they did wrong, when they did right, it didn't matter. Weekly contact. A face-to-face contact. I made sure I also had a face-to-face contact with them. They'll call me and say, well, I'm just checking out. I said, no, I need to see your face. And so we'll meet somewhere, or they'll come by, or swing by, even if just to pull up in the driveway in the car. Assessment and development of their home life. I know their mama, I know their grandmama now. The grandmama and them can call me. I call, what's wrong, Miss Bird? I ain't seen him in 2 days. All right, Miss Bird. I start calling them out and looking for them because I got that kind of contact with the family. Assessment and development of community life. I try to get them involved. They start creating a network of kind of rap sessions among people who were caught up with the same thing they were. And they didn't want me to be present because they wanted to be real with themselves. And they continued and developed relationships as a result of that. Some of them got jobs at some places that other people got, et cetera. Assessment and development of probationary life, that's if applicable. Those of you who are going to be doing urban community, you got to expect that may be a possibility. Social fun outing, at least every other week we go to the game or we watch Power. Group navigation sessions with the team to support the contact and interaction of addressing the above. I used to meet with the representatives from the service providers, the other people who were involved in their lives and trying to get them to that right purpose. And we met on a regular basis and we shared information. And so we all supported. I am because you are. You are because I am. Phase 3. I'm moving quickly because I'm past my time. Yeah. Phase 3 is develop and nurture internal gifts, talents, and skills. Allow them to begin to self-express. Once they begin working on who they are, allow them the space, create spaces in the worship experience, in the convention, in the summer festival, in the Christmas holiday social. Create spaces for them to express themselves. And not you stand over there cringing and feeling embarrassed, but allow them to do it. And they may not get it good. How many people remember Christmas speeches and Easter speeches? Yeah, they don't do that no more. But those are the kinds of things that gave me the opportunity to speak, to kind of work out my thoughts, who I was, all of those kinds of things. That's what I'm talking about, giving them the opportunity to express themselves, to focus, to fine-tune their lineage. Visioneering, that's that book by Andy Stanley I was talking about. Discerning good ideas, helping them to discern good ideas from God ideas, navigating the how. The biggest issue, even for us as adults, is how is this going to happen? You got to help them to navigate that. They don't have to be responsible for that. If this is the purpose and plan God has for your life, He will provide. Developing and building networks, help them to build beyond you and your church and to get connected into other networks. Matching process. You want to then start to identify people along the lines of their interests and their gifts and allow them to start kind of buddying with them as well and connecting them as well so that they are hearing not just from your voice or from the team's voice, from outside, quote unquote, objective voices that they got this and they can do this and etc. Then personal coaching, help them with life skills, tutoring, college professional, the building blocks, again, they're on your sheets, the activities, and then the last phase, affirm them as leadership. You've got to let them, I'm finished, take ownership. Because in taking ownership, they build the confidence and the leadership skills that help them to go back and bring somebody else, to begin to transform their own small networks, their own senses of groups, and their own peer as advocates, but also as people who are helping them to point them in the right direction. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to just take a quick break.
We come from Christians in the Middle East, and I wanted to ask you, do you see any similarities between what Christianity has gone through in the Middle East versus African Americans in this country? Because they have been second, third class citizens for hundreds of years as well. So we sympathize, but I wanted to know your point of view on that.
Interesting question, very good question. I hesitate because I've been in a lot of places in the world, but I've never had a personal experience
in the Middle East as Christians. I will say that as part of a commission for the Baptist World Alliance, we did have an opportunity to engage some Christians from Jordan and Syria, and particularly in light of the recent events and et cetera, of what life was like there. I think it was interesting here in America, and I don't want to say this broadly for black people in general, but in particular here in America, it was interesting that our persecutors were also Christian, and they are the ones who also attempted to teach us the version of their understanding of Christianity. And so that's one glaring difference I see. Whereas those who may be accused of oppressing you are not necessarily Christians, whereas it was Christians who were using the very same thing that we believe in, etc., against us. Similarities would be that we were forced to develop and nurture this community kind of space that was not bound by walls or a church or a tradition or etc. The great Negro spiritual steal away to Jesus. That in some sense, both as collective but also individually, we stole away. We secreted ourselves away in a sense of a space that was spirit-filled and spirit-led, that helped us to endure the oppressive nature of what we were experiencing from the very same people who say they believe the same thing we did. And so through that sense of spirit, we saw a God, a Christ, that was very different from the God in Christ that they tried to make us receive. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate you offering how important it is to see the students where they are and what's important to them. I wondered if you would also speak to, when you're in a particular setting, how important it is to bring in other voices from other places as well. I was hired in the Bronx to offer, to show them that there is differences outside of the community. So I would love to hear that it didn't last yet, but I intend to persist there.
Yeah, I do think it is critical and important. I think this is part of what is one of the foundational principles of Project New Generation, is exposure. And also I think, if I'm not mistaken, other than me drawing on the Word of God, I did not create any of the phases that was based on a philosophy of preaching Jesus. It was even though I think it stems from my understanding of Christ's teaching, but it wasn't just kind of Jesus, because I also believe that exposure to all things and to everything is critical and important to people becoming who they are. Again, the scripture says, point them into the direction that they should go, so that when they're old, they won't depart from it. If you point them into what is the purpose and plan and aim and end of their lives, understand that nobody will lose. We all gain as a result of that.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for everything that you have shared with us. And then, as we see today, like gender identity is a problem. It's a big confusion. So, what would you suggest to people who are doing youth ministry and then who are facing this kind of problem? And then, as you stated that God doesn't make any mistake.
Yeah. Well, please understand me. I think we're still stuck on gender identity. I think the young people, when I was we all adults in here, right? Okay. When I was at Brown, some of my parishioners, I was the associate Protestant chaplain initially, and then third world center director. They don't identify with no sexuality. They may be tri, bi, I think we got to catch up. We're really far behind. Why do I say that to you? If again, my issue is not that we should be treating that. What we should really be treating is their relationship with the purpose and direction for their lives. And if we treat that, I believe all the other stuff will fall in line. Now, that doesn't mean, if I was joining a youth group in a traditional sense, I am not going to let a male and a female do things that I don't think they should do together, or it's not permissible. I think the same rule applies in those kind of things. And so we're not really dealing with heterosexual sexuality when we do youth group. I don't know why we feel like we got to do it when they are same-sex or they trisexual or whatever. In a sense, what we in sense are developing is helping them to direct and focus their lives toward a purpose and a goal that we all benefit from. And I'm not suggesting somehow we ignore that, but what I am suggesting, going through the process of them being able to self-identify and be confident about their self-identity, then that doesn't become a barrier, and we don't allow it to be a barrier for us to be engaged. Let me also say this. I have never gone into a room and worked with people and I needed to know their sexuality to do it. Let me also, because I don't want to think I'm just on I'm only defending one side. On the other side is there's sometimes the social environment in which we exist forces us and challenges us to seek validation from other people. And what I'm suggesting that Project New Generation does is take that away. You don't need to be validated by other people, that you've got to accept me as this. I just accept you as a person. And it doesn't matter to me who you sleep with. It doesn't matter to me, what you do. I don't even really care what church you go to. That's what Ubuntu, also another, I didn't really talk more about this. Ubuntu says that it really kind of means in the African word, I see you. I see you. That means that you're not invisible, or who you are, your identity is not invisible. I see you. And it's all right. I hope that answered your question.
What's the greeting that says I see you? There is a special greeting in a certain language. I see you.
Namaste. That's Indian. That's good.
Thank you for your lecture, Dr. Mathis. My comment would be kind of a follow-up to what you talked about sexuality. I believe is that we are not as culturally diverse as we think we are when we deal even with adults and in churches. I think churches really need to have a class on cultural diversity, and whether the group in the church is all Caucasian or all African Americans, is that we assume because somebody looks like us, they are to behave like us, and they are to think like us, and they're to do like us. But coming from another part of the world and been in this country for a while, I can see the difference in how church life is taught and how youth are influenced in different ways. And in all honesty, having a medical field for the last 35 years of my life, I taught cultural diversity for many years, and I use the scenario where you are on the ocean or in a very deep swimming pool and you're drowning, and the only person to save you is not like you. And so you would not ask them, what's your religion, what's your sexual orientation, where you from, what's your belief, and all of that thing would not come in your mind. You just want to live. So I think if we treat people in the way as if we were dying and we needed them, regardless of their color, creed, race, gender, whatever they are. We see an individual that God created. So for me and my belief being a pastor, I leave all judgment to God. Because when he called somebody like Peter, who was a cusser, and still was a cusser when he was with God, I'm sure God slapped him on the face many times. It took him a long time to change into who this disciple apostle became. So I think we have to let people grow in the span in which, and let God do the changing part in them. Because we ourselves got some dark blotches that we need to change, that nobody doesn't see or think they see. So when someone comes to me about, because I teach a lot on this about gender, I tell them that I don't know what gender is. Because I can't see if you are a thief, I can't see if you're a liar, I can't see if you're a gossiper. So if you want to describe people, then you might have to describe your own self. So for me, when it comes to engaging people, I don't see the physical aspect of them. I kind of look at the soul. And you're talking about books that you read. This guy is Gary Sukov. He writes some good books, The Seat of the Soul and The Seat of the Mind. If you grab a hold of one of those books, you might change how you think about engaging even adults in your life.
Is it separated of the soul?
Seat of the soul is the right and the seat of the mind.
But are they treated separately? Yes. In the scriptures, we're taught that is a false teaching, that the false whole, that it was not separated.
So in our biblical reflection in my denomination, the pastor unpacked the terms and the original language that said that it's not separated, the soul from the mind, from the body, that it's all whole. And that was a misuse from the Catholic Church. That's what I learned.
So I come from the UCC tradition where we talk about God is still speaking, and we talk about how so many different interpretations find a home in our church, which is a great gift. And I think that lends itself a lot to what you've been speaking about today as well. I know for an American Baptist brethren, it's a gift to be able to have that connection with you as well. Can we give him one more round of applause? Thank you so much for attending this lecture, and thank you in advance for filling out those surveys that were in the middle of your tables, and we hope to see you next month. Thank you very much.
Thank you.